Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to Gran Turismo 7. So I put a poll up the other day and basically asked you guys what you wanted to see in terms of content on the channel for the upcoming week. And the majority of you said money making methods and builds. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. I will be making other content in between, but there will be at least one build video a day for the next 7 days. I also saw a comment that said mix it up, put some of your more fun builds in as well as just the fastest ones. So I'm going to start out with one of my most entertaining builds, and that is the Mazda RX500 from 1970. So in terms of actually making this build, you can pretty much get the best performance parts and stay under 700 pp. So we're going to go with the racing soft tyres. This is because this car is very good on fuel and very good on its tyres. You also want to make sure you've got a set of intermediates or wets just to cover off the chance of rain, which is quite high where we're going to run this car. We've got the fully customizable suspension, and then we're going to run it in terms of its body height. This is going to be personal preference, but my personal preference was a body height of 125 at the front, and then at the rear it was 130. On the anti-roll bar I went maximum at the front to 10, and then at the rear I went for 3. Again, for the compression I went 35 at the front and 30 rear, with the expansion being 40 and 45. Natural frequency I went for 3.05 and 2.65 with a negative camber angle of 1.5 on both. Toe angle at the front I went 0.05 outwards and 0.18 inwards at the rear. Then we also have the fully customizable differential, which will pretty much allow you to customize this. Again, it's going to be personal preference, but to stop the car kind of spinning out and being too aggressive on its power as soon as you put the throttle down, I went for initial torque of 55, acceleration sensitivity of 43, and braking sensitivity of 60. That one's the most important because I felt like whenever I was heavy on the brakes with this car, it would just slide itself into the barrier. So I went full up to 60 with this one. Now this is where I made a mistake. When I originally built this around about a month and a half ago, I had the fully customizable racing transmission and swapped it for the fully customizable manual. So this one is built around that. I did individual gears and such, and I set them to 300. You can go with the racing one if you want. Now I went for a first of 3.506 over 73, 2.337 over 110, 1.682 over 152, 1.280 over 200, 1.029 over 283, and a final of 3.900. This is personal preference, nice long gears for those Le Mans straights. We are not ballast or power restricting this build, and we do have the fully customizable ECU installed on this car. You cannot get aero parts for this car, and that means you cannot run any downforce. We have the high RPM turbocharger installed. It almost feels like it gives it a second wind, so you'll hit the rev limiter and then it'll just keep going. It'll just really rev up and scream at you. It sounds incredible. We have the racing intercooler and then all the standard racing parts, as you can see, including the likes of the brake system, brake pads, and then at the bottom here we have the brake controller. I recommend a front rear balance of 2, so it's 2 towards the rear. Then if we go up here, we have the clutch and flywheel as racing as well. And then we have the perma mods of engine balance tuning, polished ports, all the weight reductions, and increased body rigidity. Feel free to pause at any moment. Again, some of it's down to personal preference, so feel free to play around and find where you are comfortable in terms of suspension and the LSD side of things. So I've noticed a lot of new players since Christmas, so I'm going to just point out the event we're going to be using. It's in Europe, it's in France at Le Mans, so you just want to go ahead to the track on your far left, and it's this event in the middle, the World Touring Car 700. It'll be the one with the highest credit reward. So let's talk about this car in general. In all honesty, this is just one of those cars that I've had in my garage for a while, but never bothered to showcase, mainly because I feel like a lot of people won't take it seriously. That doesn't mean this car's a slouch, not by any means. In fact, it's probably one of the more powerful cars because it almost feels like you're using a road-going version of the 787B. Yes, it's old, yes, it has no downforce, but the fuel consumption and the tyre life on this car is just absolutely incredible. Matched with the ability to hit around about 200 miles an hour on the straight, it doesn't really have any weaknesses. Once you've got it tuned to your personal liking, you'll find that this car does actually become very controllable, even without any real aero on it. And that was the main thing I was finding where I was going wrong when I was originally building this car. It was just far too much of a brute. It would just kick out at the slightest bit of acceleration. Under braking it, it kind of throw itself into a wall. And I feel like I've finally found the perfect balance in terms of actually running this car. I do recommend at least 1 point into the traction control and all the other assists off. That's how I personally run it. If you're not as confident, then put a bit more traction on, but you'll probably absolutely nerf the car into oblivion, as traction control can just really hinder your performance in this game. So let's get into my actual strategy. I'll quickly go over it, and then what I essentially did was run the car in fuel mix 1 until we got into the lead, and then turned it down and went for a nice little cruise. So this is a classic road car, so don't expect it to be the easiest car to drive. It may take you some getting used to, or you may glue with it straight away. A lot of your control over this car is coming onto the brakes nice and gently and not being too harsh with your throttle. You need to have a pretty decent throttle control, and the car will eventually gel with you. That's the best way to run these older cars, where most of them are quite brutish and will just kick around. Once you kind of get that feeling down with this car, you're not really going to have any problems, at least in my experience. Once I got used to how this car behaved, it was pretty easy to get it under control. Like I did mention, we are going to run just 1 point in traction control, everything else is going to be off, but again, that's going to be very much personal preference. So in terms of difficulty, it's up to you, but honestly when I run them on, I just keep it on easy. This way I'm mainly assured to do a 6-lap stop and wait, but then you've kind of got the RNG of the weather. So again, it's up to you, but I like to basically hide the chance that I can just kind of stop there at the end of lap 6, which sadly I wasn't able to do in this race, where we didn't really have much rain. It never really interfered too much, so in all honesty, it really just made it that I had to do the 7 laps instead of just doing what I'd usually do, which is get to lap 6, stop, wait at the line, let the counter go over, and then just drive myself over. So that is the best way to do it. This way you're pretty much, you know, as close to the 30-minute time limit as possible. If you have to do another lap though, don't really sweat it. It's not too much of a big deal. It just kind of works like that depending on the weather and how much it catches yourself and the AI out. Like I said, I had a pretty dry run here. We did have a downpour, but it didn't hang around really long enough and it didn't really affect the race in general, so I did have to do 7 laps. So once you've kind of overtaken the AI, what I recommend doing is just essentially turning the engine down. This way you're going to go and get the most life out of your tyres and out of your fuel. That's where this car really excels. Once you get onto the second lap, I recommend just doing the usual of watching your weather radar, because this is when the chance of rain really ups itself. Between usually lap 2 and 3 is when you'll begin to see rain kind of appear on the radar. As you can see here at the end of lap 2, we've got a bit of formation of rain coming in, and we're going to do essentially just take ourselves around for 1 more lap before that really affects us. So as we got towards the end of lap 3, we did get caught out a little bit by the rain. As you can see, it just went for 1 extra downpour, and well, that was us into the gravel. But you know, no real worries there. At this point, we're already pretty much a minute up on the AI. They're also going to get caught out a little bit. Usually you'll kind of, you know, catch them spinning around if you ever do see them on track, which more than likely you probably won't at this difficulty level. Eventually we did get ourselves back to the pits, and I basically just covered myself off and basically put the intermediates on. So all I'm doing is, it's raining, I'm going to cover myself off, just make sure the rain doesn't catch me out, and then at this point after the pit stop I'm going to go into full fuel saving mode, because even if it does dry out, the inters really aren't too bad. So at this point you want to essentially turn your fuel mix to 6, make sure you're running that constantly, and it should take you all the way to the end of the race and no problem. At this point, you pretty much just want to take advantage of the best features of this car, which is tyre life and fuel consumption, and you're all good until the end of the race. So as you can see, we got to lap 6, we had around about just under 3 minutes left, but just over a kind of nearly 2-minute gap to the AI, so we couldn't really stop and wait, so I just went along and did an extra lap. Finally, at the end of lap 7, we got the job done. We at this point have a 2.5 minute gap to the AI, so they were really no bother. We were almost lapping the back of the pack. In fact, we did lap some of them by the look of it, according to this, but we didn't actually lap any on track. So we got a fastest lap of 14 minutes 14. That was on intermediates on the final lap. In all honesty, if you're running the softs and you can get, you know, a few extra laps out, the 1 lap potential on this car is actually very, very impressive. So, you know, the AI aren't going to be an issue, and pretty much in 30 minutes when you do your stop and wait version, you'll come out with 825k in pretty much dot on 30 minutes, which you can do the majority of the time. So there we have it. This is the first episode of a 7-day stint, basically, of doing money grinding methods, builds, all that stuff. And like I said, I'm going to incorporate not only just the fastest builds, but builds that might have been sat in my garage that I haven't really shown because they're kind of just more personal builds and such. And they're usually cars that you wouldn't, you know, normally expect to be grinding cars exactly. But I do find them a massive amount of fun. And that's really what keeps the grind fresh for me. So thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, turn those notifications on so you don't miss an upload from myself. I'll be doing this all week as well as other content. I'm going to try and knuckle down again this week. So yeah, thank you so much for your support recently. Big thank you to my sponsors, the Controller People and Poggers. And as well, down in the description I'll have my Twitter, my Discord and my donation link. If you want to meet some like-minded people, that Discord is the place to be. I'll see you all later on, guys. Have a great day. Take care and stay safe. And as always, peace.